Yeah.
Hey everybody, today's guest carries a testimony of faith, courage, and radical healing. Barbara Walsh became a board-certified master health coach after overcoming breast cancer naturally through the power of prayer and nutrition without surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. Now more than 10 years cancer-free, she helps women in midlife take fearless ownership of their health and reset their metabolism so they can prevent disease, reclaim their energy, and feel confident in their bodies again. Barbara's story is a powerful reminder that healing is possible and that stewardship of our bodies is an act of faith. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. So, I'd love for you to share a little bit about who you are today and what life looks like.
Today, I've made a major pivot in my life, and more than obviously it was due to that pivotal moment in my life that you just kind of outlined there. Today, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a business owner. I'm a board certified master health and wellness coach. I'm in college again after many years, and I'm getting my master's in nutrition to add that to my skill set to help people. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do today. Yeah.
That's really awesome. And the master's in nutrition, it's funny. We should make every MD out there get a master's in nutrition, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a mind-boggling thing that nutrition is um, kind of a throwaway thing. It's a discounted thing. It's a thing that, we all think that we know just based on, the couple of things we learned when we were in grade school, because that's
Hmm.
about really when you start to learn anything about nutrition. And then it ends after that. We don't know
Right.
anything else about it, and we don't care
Right.
anything else about it. And if you're someone like myself, you'd go through your life not really knowing the impact of food, not really knowing the power of food, and not really knowing that, everything that we eat is impacting our bodies either positive or negatively. And that's not something that ever really made sense to me or something I've really thought about. And I think that's an important thing for people to know because, as far as your health is concerned, you can affect a lot of change in your life, in your body, in the way that you feel mentally, physically,
Hmm.
um, by the choices that you make and what you eat, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, then now take us back to the season when things felt the hardest.
Well, that was 10 years ago. Everything was great. My husband and I had celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. My son was, kind of, I guess maybe he was a sophomore in high school at the time. And so, we were kind of thinking about, what's going to be next for us? What are all the great things that we're going to do when we become empty nesters? Well, I only have the one son. And so, we had a lot of big plans. And then I went in for a mammogram, just a regular checkup. And honestly, it never occurred to me that anything would be different than any other time that I went. But this time was totally different. That's when they told me they saw something in there and they sent me for biopsies. And then that's when they told me that, those words that nobody ever wants to hear, you have breast cancer. And so that was the thing that really, it changed everything about my life, the trajectory of my life, what I thought my life was. And also, it became like a time of discovery. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it really is true because, when I got that diagnosis, I was I was shocked. I was blindsided. And I think that's true of a lot of people who get any type of diagnosis, especially a cancer diagnosis. It just feels like one day you're doing something and the next thing, bam, you've got cancer. And so I was upset by that, obviously, because it's terrifying. And
Hmm.
then I started, you know, thinking about, how did this even happen to me? And so when I talked to my oncologist, I asked that question. I was like, how did this happen? And she looked at me and she said, well, you're not in the high risk category and we don't really know. And I guess it was just, bad genes, bad luck of the cards. And I thought to myself, that was a pretty dissatisfying answer because I thought, You're the person who's supposed to help me, and you have no idea how this even
Hmm.
happened to me. And then so she outlined, the protocols that, would be the treatment protocol. And that's going to really be the same for every woman. Actually, any person who has cancer, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to be you're going to get surgery, you're going to get radiation, you're going to get chemo, and then you'll probably get some other type of, pharmaceutical intervention. In my case, I was diagnosed with a estrogen positive breast cancer, so they wanted me to take tamoxifen for the rest of my life because that would have been the estrogen blocker. So it
Hmm.
was either that protocol or getting double mastectomy, because in my mind I thought, well, I don't want to, I don't want to, I really don't want to have to do this again. In my mind, I'm thinking to myself at the time, I just want to get this over with. I want to be done, right? How do I do that? What's the fastest way? And so the doctor said, well, it's either plan A or it's plan B. But even with the plan B version, even with removing, considerable amount of my body parts, it still would have been chemo and it still would have been tamoxifen. And so my husband asked the doctor, this question, which was really another head turner.
Uh-huh.
He said to her, well, if my wife does these things, will she be cured? And the doctor said, well, there's no guarantees. We'll
Hmm.
consider it a success if there's no recurrence within 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And so that really, another thing that was like, what? And I started thinking to myself, 5 years. 5 years really isn't that long. It's very, it's really a blink of an eye, honestly, 5 years. And you learn that as you get older in life, honestly, time goes much faster. And so it's like 5 years. Oh my gosh. And so I started thinking about, first of all, she really wanted me to get into sign up for all my treatment. She really wanted me to get into surgery right away. And then she wanted me to
Sure.
schedule all my chemos and all that jazz. And so, my husband and I are Christians. And so I was so overwhelmed with everything that she was telling me. And I was so fearful about it. I couldn't make that decision. And so, as she's like, there was a lot of pressure too. There's always a lot of pressure in that moment, pressure to get into treatment, pressure
Yeah.
feeling like, if you don't get into treatment immediately, you're making the biggest mistake of your life and you will die tomorrow.
Yep.
That's pretty much what it's like. And the weight of that is incredible. You can't even process what they're telling you, and they want you to make these life-changing decisions.
Hmm.
So as she was laying out that treatment protocol, I was thinking to myself, I don't have a background in medicine, science, none of that stuff. Um, I'm an artist, so I really knew nothing about any of that stuff. And so, um, as I was thinking about what she was telling me, I was thinking 5 years if I don't have recurrence. But she's telling me I need to get chemotherapy. And even without a medical background, I knew that chemo is a carcinogenic substance. It's well
Hmm.
documented out there. You can look it up if you want to. It's clear it causes cancer. So chemo causes cancer. Radiation, we know causes cancer. I mean, you think about it, you go to the dentist, right? They want to take a little picture of your gum. They load you up with the metal vest. The tech goes running out of the door. They close the door and then they hit the button for like a minute, or not even a minute, second, and then they run back in because they don't want to be exposed. I mean, and that's just a minute, example, but we know that
Hmm.
radiation causes cancer. And I didn't know it at the time, but I found out later that tamoxifen is known to cause uterine cancer.
Oh, jeez.
So as I was thinking about all of these things, maybe not so much of tamoxifen in that moment, but I was thinking, if I continue to expose myself to, um, carcinogenic substances, what would preclude me from getting a recurrence of cancer in 5 years if I'm constantly, bombarding my body with this stuff? So we decided it was time to leave and go home and pray. And my doctor was really mad, but that was what we decided to do. So I went home and I spent a lot of time in prayer. I really needed direction. I needed some answers. I wanted options. I was hoping there was options. And from what my doctor was telling me and from what I was finding was that, there were no options. It was this way or you're going to die. And so as I was praying about it, I learned a lot. I really believe that, the Lord kind of led me on this pathway of discovery. As I said, I didn't know anything about medicine, science. I knew nothing about nutrition. I didn't care about any of that stuff. It was just not important to me, you know? For me, as far as food was concerned, I mean, I was a regular person. It was like, you know, whatever's fast, whatever's, reasonably inexpensive, whatever tastes really, really good, I'm there. I don't care. I don't care how it affects my body. In fact, you know, it was this running joke in our house because like I was always like, the junk food queen in the house. And, I would eat really crummy stuff and love every minute while I was eating it. And my husband would be like, "How could you eat that? That's disgusting." And now I wouldn't say that he was exactly, Mr. Nutrition, but he definitely was the nutrition police out of the two of us. And I would say, "Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it for me." But, again, I didn't know. I didn't care about any of that stuff. So as I was, God was leading me to do all this research. I found out some pretty amazing stuff along the way. My first question was like, how did this happen to me? Especially because, you know, you brought up something really important, when you introduced this show about stewardship, ownership and stewardship. And I think that's something that it never really occurred to me how that could apply in my life.
Hmm.
But as far as my body and my health was concerned, I could see it as I was going through this process that stewardship was a big deal. I didn't really take good care of myself, although I thought I took care of myself. I thought I did okay, like I would just, I would eat my meals. I thought, the food pyramid, I thought all that stuff was, that was what we should be eating, and
And
again, I
that food
didn't.
pyramid's now expired and they flipped it.
They flipped it, right? Because now over time, you could see even, research continues to expand and people are becoming more and more knowledgeable about things and they're becoming more and more interested in, what they can do proactively. And I think that's been amazing,
Right.
So anyway, I learned that my biggest question was, like why did I get cancer? Like out of all the people, why me? I
Uh-huh.
had no idea that like 1 in 8 women statistically will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. I had no idea that every 2 minutes a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer. And it never occurred to me that I would ever be one of those people. And so I started learning like what's the breaking point of that? How come it happened to me and it didn't happen to like my
Mhm.
sister or my neighbor or my friend? How come? And so that's when I started to learn that, the real reason behind why some people get cancer and some people don't, really has to do with your immune system and whether or not you are under a lot of stress and things like that that are going to be compromising the way that your immune system functions. And the other
Mhm.
thing I learned, which was really crazy to me, because like my perception of cancer was always like something out there. It's out there somewhere, and or in the worst case, it's almost like this thing hiding under your bed that you don't know is there, and then one day it could hop out and it'll kill you. That was my perception of cancer. I had no idea that cancer is kind of a breakdown that happens in our own internal biological process of our cells trying to renew themselves all the time
Mhm.
because that's what they do. And when there's a breakdown in that system, that's when you could have cells become damaged in some way. And then when they become damaged some way, the way that they are designed to work, their instruction manual gets lost. And then
Mhm.
they go off and they start replicating uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, the other thing I didn't know about that is that our body has something in place to take care of that, to stop that from even happening. So and that's your immune system. And so the thing is that any of us could have cancer in our bodies at any given time. Whether or not that cancer becomes, replicating or metastasize in some way has to do with whether or not your immune system has been able to, eradicate it and get rid of it before you even knew it was there. And
Right.
that was like turned my head on its side. I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Well, it's believable, but I wish I had known.
Right,
And
right.
so, as I thought about that, I thought, wow. if I'm clearly compromised because I got this thing, right? And so it started me thinking back to, my life beforehand. And an important part of that is that something else that I learned in this process is that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, cancer is a pretty slow growing thing. In fact, it can take up to 10 years for cancer to grow in a body before they could pick it up on any kind of scan.
Hmm.
So that means that, like I was saying, stuff's going on in your body and you just don't know about it. And
Hmm.
so I started thinking back to my 10-year period prior to this diagnosis. And, I had a lot of stress in my life. Stress is something I didn't know this, but I know it now. Stress is something that shuts down your immune system. I had a terrible diet, like I told you. So I wasn't eating foods that would actually support my body's ability to
Uh-huh.
heal. I was actually eating foods that would unfortunately help cancer to grow, in the case that if it was there, it would help it to grow.
Hmm.
And then I was also experiencing a lot of things like, you know, rogue, mysterious symptoms and things like that. Like, I mean, I've just met you, but
You're fine.
I put it out there. Before that, in that 10-year period, I had constant UTIs. I would get sinus
Uh,
infections. I had GI stomach issues. I had constipation. Every time my kid went to school, he brought home whatever was there and I got it. You
yeah.
name it. I was always dealing with something. And
Hmm.
because I was always a very compliant person, I would always run to the doctor and say, "Hey, I got this." And they would write me a prescription. I'd go to the pharmacy, I'd take the pill, whatever it was, and I'd
Yeah.
be okay until the pill was done. And then I'd
Yep.
probably be good for a week. And then all of a sudden, these things started like rearing their heads all the time. And then when I couldn't get to the pharmacist, to get my prescription, I was at the pharmacy getting something over the counter
Sure,
because I was
sure.
looking for relief. So, you know, I didn't realize at the time that all of these things that I was experiencing, like you get a sinus infection, right? You get a UTI. Does it make sense to you that they come from the same place? Probably not, because one's in your head and one's somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
One's in your kidneys, so like you don't put those things together, but the truth is all of those things are rooted in the same thing.
Yep.
They're rooted in how well your body is functioning and how strong your immune system is. And
Yeah.
so, as I started to see that, it was like I got this amazing realization that, wow, I had something to do with this. And that's like a really tough pill to swallow
Sure.
all by itself because, you know, stuff doesn't always just happen out of the blue. I mean,
Hmm.
especially things like cancer, it takes time to grow, and the whole point is that all of the things that I had been doing, like eating poorly, not sleeping well, carrying a lot of stress, never exercising, things like that, were creating an environment in my body where cancer could grow. So,
I have a question.
yeah,
I want to rewind a little bit. I'm not sure where you stand on this, so it's not meant to uh, cause aggravation. But it is coming out in the holistic world on how mammograms are actually being proven to cause the cancer, not find it. And I
totally.
was just curious if you thought that maybe that could, I'm not saying that all the rest of it didn't also contribute, but could that have also contributed as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in my case, especially because again, sharing TMI, too much information
Well,
today.
that's what this is
But
about. Mostly only women listen to this, so we're good.
yeah, I mean, I was a woman from the time that I, developed. I had fibrocystic breasts, lumpy breasts, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was just like even doing those, monthly self-exams was pointless because it's like, I don't know, it all feels like lumps. I don't know, is it a good lump, a bad lump, a bad, I don't know. So, I just always had that from the time I was a kid, you know?
Hmm.
And so because of that, they constantly sent me for mammograms, constantly, because they
Hmm.
were worried about the fact that I had these fibrocystic breasts. So I probably went more often than
Hmm.
most women or some women. And the
Hmm.
thing is, back to the whole thing of being a really good compliant patient, I
Hmm.
did it. I went. I had
Yeah.
no idea, though. I had no idea that, you know, first of all, breast tissue. is the most sensitive tissue in the body. There's some research out there that says that breast tissue is more sensitive than like a newborn infant or on that
Wow.
parallel.
Hmm.
So like you wouldn't expose your newborn infant to radiation if you could avoid it. And you
Sure.
definitely wouldn't compress them into a thing
Yeah, and
to
swoosh it.
flatten them out like a pancake so you could see what was going on inside. And I
Right.
had no idea that the other thing about that, and this is going to be controversial, and
It's
I
all right.
tell
I opened up the controversial door. I don't care if somebody doesn't like this podcast. They're welcome to turn it off right
that's
now.
true.
Keep
That's
going.
true. Yeah. The other thing about the whole mammogram controversy is the factor, the compression factor, because when whenever when cancer cells develop in the body, your body will send its immune soldiers to
Hmm.
surround them and
Hmm.
trap them, right?
Hmm.
And that's the tumor, right?
Right.
And it tries to contain them until your body can remove it, right?
Right.
So let's just say that you're like one of these people and you're in this 10-year time frame before they could even pick it up on a mammogram. That's the other thing. They can't even see it. They can't see it until it's already there, right?
Hmm.
So let's say you're one of those people like I was, right? And there's something going on in your body. Your body has sent your immune cells out there to trap it, and it has contained it in this little orb, let's just say, which is sort of a tumor. You can't even see it and feel it. But there is a risk when you apply that much compression to it that that will burst that. And
Right.
then
It's
all of
kind
a
of like a
sudden,
popping a boba, right?
yes. And
I
then
mean, you hate to make it sound so flippant, but
it's true
same
though.
thing.
Yeah. And then what you have is you get a spread. So
Right.
then you have another issue with that. So yeah, it's controversial. Some
Yeah.
people say no, no, no. But then again, there's this whole other thing too, where it's like there's so much overdiagnosis of people
Sure.
because of these interventions.
Right.
The other thing too is, and this was true for myself, I think there's, and I'm going to sound naive. I had always had a very big misconception that I thought that by getting my mammogram, I was being responsible and I was actually preventing cancer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anybody who knows me well enough knows that I don't agree with any of it. And unfortunately, I think that particular because that's what they program out there. That's what the pharmaceutical world wants you to know. You're preventing it, blah blah blah. All these women knew early because of it. No, I think what happened is that it was caused because of it. It spread because of it. There is another option, and I'm waiting for you to bring it up, and that's called thermography.
Yeah, oh yeah, thermography is
You
great.
use that now?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. And
I
I
haven't
actually,
been. I'm too afraid to go. But
oh
it's
God, it's
like,
have you ever had a mammogram?
hell no. Excuse my
Okay.
mouth. I won't do anything medical anymore. I do a ton holistically. Um, and I pay attention to my body probably as well as you do, right? It's like when you get so in tune at this point, you're like it'll tell you what's going on before anybody else knows what's going on. And I go to chiropractors and some homeopathic, all this stuff. And so
Mhm.
I would like to go to do thermography, but I'm waiting for my body. Like nobody can see this because it's an audio program, but I'm very puffy, right? There's a reason for that because I had an emergency appendectomy 6 years ago. Oh no, 5 years ago for January 1st, 2021. And from that point forward, my body has been holding on to fluid. And so I'm currently working with a chiropractic team where we're trying to get my body to one, absorb nutrients properly, like digest and then absorb properly. And then we'll work on methylation, which then makes it feel safe enough to push everything the way it's supposed to go. Well, if I'm not careful, we push too fast, everything will chelate out my skin. And so
Hmm.
my chiropractor made a very good point. He explained it so well. So picture it with me. When we have most people in the world have trash containers that go out once a week to the end of the street. That would be
Hmm.
like our body going through the lymph system, going through our organs, and going out our bowels and through our urine, right?
Correct.
And so
Hmm.
that's the normal way.
Hmm.
But when it gets overwhelmed, it's like, screw this, and you throw the trash out to the back of the yard.
Mm.
That's what it's
Mhm.
like to go through the skin. And so
Mhm.
we're currently right now, I mean, my skin's healthy right now. I still look a little puffy, but I'm doing tapping on my body. I'm doing jumping on my rebounder. I'm skin brushing every day. I'm going on a vibration plate and I'm doing what I can for
Mhm.
me. And
Mhm.
so what's interesting is if I were to go to a regular doctor, they would be like, I don't know, here's a pill. That's what's happened to me my whole life. Now, that doesn't mean for everything. There are some really good doctors out there. I just haven't met any.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it's easier for me to feel in control of my health. And that's where I'd like for you to share about how you empower women to take control of their health. Because if someone's identifying with, well, okay, like Barbara, like now I'm in, whether you're in your teens or your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you can take control of your health at any point. No is
Correct.
a complete sentence. And I will go do this. Now, medical system will try to bully you, which is why I don't step into it anymore. I did have to step into it for the emergency appendectomy. I told them I'm coming in. There's something wrong. You're going to take the appendix out. I'm not going to die, and I'm leaving that night.
Mhm.
But I took control of myself. Now, it was
Mhm.
also in the middle of COVID. Nobody else could go with me.
Mm.
But it was before the vaccine, so I didn't have to worry about being pressured to do that.
Thank God for that.
Amen, amen. So I wouldn't have done it, but I also didn't trust anybody not to do something to me while I was asleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, people are like, why don't you trust anything? Because there's reasons why the world is the way it is and why I believe so much in the Maha movement and making everything as transparent as glass,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
why the world is so mad right now
Yeah. Mhm. I
because
agree.
everything's coming out into the light. So on the empowerment side, I'd love for you to share, if a woman's coming to you and they're like, "Oh, Barbara, but I eat Cheetos every night and ice cream for dessert. I eat McDonald's every day. I don't even know where to start because if I'm not eating that, I'm hungry all the time, but I'm hungry all the time because that's full of sugar, but I don't know how to get up the sugar because my gut's bad." You know all the things. Your turn.
Well, that is actually a very individualized conversation that I
Sure.
would have with any woman because we're all different,
Right.
like um and also the other side of that conversation too is making people aware that number one, if you feel like crap and you're confused about it, it's not normal, okay? Because I was in that boat, like I had gotten to a place where I had complacency about my health. Not only that, but I'm older than you, so I was getting older, and so I felt like well, everybody's getting older. We all feel like crap. Everybody gets together. We all commiserate about, our symptoms, our meds, and blah, 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 blah. And okay, that's just part of the deal. First thing I think to empower people or women especially is to let them know, number one, if you feel like crap, it's not normal.
Right.
And there is something that you can do about it, and it doesn't always require a pill.
Right.
It does, however, require some commitment to that curiosity that you mentioned about why I feel this way in the first place, and also an openness to try something different. Like
Hmm.
there's that famous quote that's like, like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result, right?
Right.
And that's really true of our own bodies too. If you were a woman like me, junk food, junkie foodie lady on the fast food line, deep fried smothered in chocolate, give me two. Exercise is a four-letter word. If you're a person like me, right? First of all, you have to be in a place where you're ready to make the change. But the other side of it is that it's the best kept secret. Like my perception before breast cancer was that why do I need to make those changes? I'm fine. I'm fine the way I am. I'm happy with the way I am. Life's too short. I might as well eat it. That was my mantra, really.
Mm.
And don't bother me about it, right? I don't want to hear any of that stuff. I didn't care about holistic anything, and I thought all that stuff was a joke, right? So, but the thing is, though, I felt like crap. I had all these terrible symptoms. My doctors couldn't tell me what, like you said, they couldn't really tell me what it was. They really had no idea. And they would look at my labs and everything would sort of be in range and they'd be like, okay, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're
And that's a
fine.
problem there in itself. It's the range stuff. It's like that's maddening to me. So
Mm-hmm.
people are like, why don't you do blood work? I go, because it's filtered and inaccurate. And there's so, I mean, I don't know. There's ways it can be helpful. I don't know. I go down some paths. People are just like, what? But here's the thing. I'm starting to feel amazing. I may not particularly look like, you know, uh, Brooke Shields or anything like that, but it's like it doesn't matter to me because you can look like an amazingly beautiful model and be super sick on the inside.
That's very
So the
true.
outside wrapper doesn't matter if you're not doing the work on the inside.
True.
So was it the diagnosis that made the flip switch, or was it because here's the thing too. You had a secret weapon that I don't know if anybody else picked up on, but your husband saved your life
Oh gosh,
by
he's so
asking the
supportive. Yeah.
questions
Mm-hmm.
and believing in you and your life and your health and your internal body systems and protecting your organs from the catastrophic repercussions of radiation and chemo. And by him being such, God knew he needed to place you in your life for such a time as that moment right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because had he not been there and he would have been medically minded, you would have been on that path and who knows where you'd be now.
Oh, I'd be dead.
Right.
I'm sure of that.
So
Or
it's like
I'd be
because people don't
suffering.
know not to eat sugar when they have cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And so I have a very dear friend of mine, and she's been on the podcast before. She healed her body of third, fourth stage cervical cancer. And when she
Mm,
told me that she got it, I'm like, no, 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 Katie, you've been on carnivore for 2 years. You've had no sugar. It's on its way out, not on its way in.
mm-hmm.
And like you said, the body processes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so what's interesting is the doctors wanted to take her whole uterus out, radiate her entire region, and she's been trying to get pregnant for 10 years since they got married. She goes, "You're not taking my fertility from me."
Oh yeah. Oh my
So
God.
she decided to do everything holistically, vitamin C therapy, UV therapy, oxygen therapy, think of it, name it, ivermectin, whatever it was, her holistic oncologist she chose, did everything naturally. 4 months later, cancer free. And then 2 weeks after that, she found out she's like, 8 weeks pregnant. This baby is now 10 months
Wow.
old.
Oh, that's amazing.
And
What a
so it's
powerful
like, this is what
story.
happens when you choose you
Mm-hmm.
and then do the steps possible. Because here's the thing, people are like, well, I don't understand why you don't go the medical route. It's faster. But is it though?
It's different because it's
Right.
not there's no silver bullet. You know, the point is that God designed our bodies with the capacity to heal, period. That's the way we're made. And that's
Right.
in God's infinite wisdom, that's the way he has made us. Because if he didn't make us like that, we'd all be dead.
Right.
We could, we'd come in contact with something, it would kill us immediately, and that would be
Right.
it, you know? So the capacity is there. The key is, are we tapping into what those systems need to, you know, support the body's capacity to heal.
Right.
And that was a big, you know, important lesson for myself at that time because as I said, I learned that, wow, what causes cancer? It has to do with your immune function. It has to do with your organ systems. It has to do with the fact that all of the things going on in your body work synergistically together. And when something is off, it throws everything else off. Other organs have to take up the slack for the organs that aren't, able to work at full capacity. And then that creates an imbalance, which creates an opening for things like inflammation, things like, immune system being compromised. A lot of different things can go awry when that happens.
Mhm.
So for me at that time was like, okay, so how, all right, if this is it, okay, I get it. I had a hand in this. All right, so I'm ready to make this change. What do I need to do? Because I am
Mhm.
not going through chemo, period. I'm not doing that. The other thing was you mentioned too about surgery. Like I was not open to getting the surgery because everybody was like, oh, it's just a simple lumpectomy, blah, 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 blah. And in my mind, I did not really want them to take out my lymph nodes because
Right.
the lymph is part of your immune system.
Right.
And then on top of that, if they were going to take out my lymph nodes and then bombard me with chemo, I would have had no immunity left, which is why
That's
I
right.
probably would be dead,
Right.
right? So I wasn't, I'm bad, I guess. I didn't really trust that if I had agreed to get a lumpectomy, I did not trust that the doctors would not take out my lymph nodes, even if I said I didn't want them removed. The other thing too is what most people don't know is usually once you break the skin, then you open up the possibility to metastasis. Like sometimes when there's actual you break that skin and mess around in there, then you get some metastasis and that can create a problem. But the whole point was that even if I had done that, and I found it out later, but I know it now, even if I had done that, I would have never been addressing, like what caused it in the first place. And if I didn't address what's the root of it, why it happened in the first place, again, another reason why I would have been at greater risk for recurrence in the
Right.
future.
Yeah. Because
So,
you were still feeding your body. If you wouldn't have changed your whole trajectory of your eating, your exercise, your holistic wellness.
mhm,
So I guess my question is, I see so often you've got the people who are hardcore medical. I'm doing it this way. I don't care what anybody says.
mhm.
It's and then people very much support it because it's the social norm right now.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's easier to just say yes.
Yep. Yep.
Because the people I know who say no, you're gonna die. They don't say that
Yeah.
to the people who are literally causing harm to their body
Yeah.
through the modalities the medical system's going.
Hmm.
You're trying to do it over here. So you make this switch. What was the silver bullet that made you decide, you know what, husband and God, you're right. What was it?
It was the peace of God, honest to goodness. The Bible says that the wisdom of God travels on a pathway of peace. And
Yeah.
I had so much peace about the idea of nourishing my body so it could heal, as opposed to going through this horribly invasive, devastating type of treatment,
Mhm.
hoping that maybe I would get well.
Right.
That and the other side of it too is I got to admit it, I'm probably vain. The whole idea of, I thought to myself, the other thing too is, based on my doctor's, prognosis, she's telling me basically 5 years, maybe you'll be okay, maybe you won't. And then from what I had learned, cancer had been growing in my body for 10 years and didn't even know it. So in my mind, theoretically, I thought, well, I probably have another 10 years until this thing progresses to whatever the next stage is, right?
Yeah.
So when I looked at, the doctors, 5 years, the 10 years for maybe a progression, it was like a crapshoot. It was like a flip of a coin. It was like there were no guarantees either way, but the idea of going through conventional treatment was so terrifying to me, only because I do know people who have gone through that route. I know people who have died. I've seen people suffer, right?
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's considering it is kidding themselves if they think that it's not going to be a pathway of suffering, honestly. And I guess I didn't want that. I
Right.
really didn't want to suffer if I didn't have to. And so, the other side of it was that the idea of choosing something that was rooted in fear didn't make sense to me either, because God
Mhm.
doesn't give us a spirit of fear. He gives us a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind in Christ
Yeah.
Jesus, right? He
Right.
doesn't give us a confused mind. He just doesn't. And the
Right.
whole idea of going into the conventional pathway, although it might seem easier, because you don't have to really think about that. Everyone's going to tell you what to do. And in my mind, that was almost like, that was the ultimate release of control, abdicating everything about my health and my body to people who don't even know me and don't even care about me. I don't care how nice your doctor's, you know, bedside manner is. My husband had said that to me when I was considering going a natural route. I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, whatever you will do, whatever you want to do, I will support you. But you have to know that if you choose to go through that conventional treatment, the doctor's not going to be there taking chemo in the chair next to you. you're the one. Whatever you do, you're the one who does it, right? You're the one who has to go through that and experience whatever that is. And so
Hmm.
as I thought about that, I had so much peace about the idea of, going a natural route. And then initially, when I was thinking about doing it, I had met a woman who had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 20 years prior to my diagnosis. And I had never met anybody who had lived 20 years after a cancer diagnosis, even if they went a conventional route. And this woman, and this was, I mean, that was 10, so you're talking 30 years ago. There was like no internet 30 years ago, or like just the infancy of the internet. So you couldn't like look for information if it's not censored today,
Right.
like we can today. You couldn't even find it back then. And this woman went a completely natural route, and it
Wow.
fascinated me. And she was out, she actually lived, I live in New Jersey, she lived in Connecticut. And so she was out, telling people her story. She would go around and do speaking to, kind of enlighten people who would ever listen. And so it amazed me. And she said to me, gave me this great, plan. She said, if you're even thinking about trying something natural, you might want to try it. See if it works for you. And you know what? If it doesn't work for you, she said, you can always go back. They'll always give you surgery. They'll always give you radiation. They'll
They
always
won't
give you
tell you no, there's
chemo.
so much money in it.
Exactly. They'll always write you those prescriptions for tamoxifen. The thing you have to know, which is important, I think everybody needs to know this, is you have more time. Like I said earlier, when you're in that pressure cooker of getting that diagnosis and seeing that oncologist for the first time, there's so much pressure to get into treatment immediately. You have more time than that. If you decide to go home that day and not sign on, you're not going to die overnight. You just won't.
Right. Well, and if you know Jesus Christ and you did die overnight, they got it wrong anyway, and now
True,
you get to live in eternity,
true.
praising Jesus the rest of the whole, the infinity.
That's
Um,
true. That's true.
so though none of us are guaranteed tomorrow anyway.
That's true. Very
And
true.
so when we live our life with our identity in Christ, nothing else matters. The little
Mm,
blips in the way. And I love how you had said, the likelihood of you dying that night, making that decision, taking your time, not being pressured, it's just like in business.
mm,
You're a business owner, I'm a business owner. When we encounter somebody who's like, you need to buy your thing, it's gonna go up tomorrow. You gotta do this today. Anytime there's a pressure situation, the answer should be no.
yeah.
At least till you have time to think about it. And
Yeah.
if they're not willing to give you time to think about it, then it's not somebody you want to work with. But
True.
just like that wise woman told you, they'll always they will welcome your money with open arms to
Oh yeah.
inject you with the poison of the planet.
Oh yeah. And for me, that was great. And I thought to myself, that's a great plan B. And I
Yeah.
thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. And initially, my goal, honestly, to be honest with you, I was amazed at the whole prospect. Talking to a person who had actually done it really changed my whole perspective on it. But I honestly wasn't completely convinced it would work. So my goal initially was just to get healthy enough to undergo conventional treatment and survive it.
Wow.
And so, I went on this natural path. I did a lot of detoxing. I changed my diet completely. I got my butt off the couch, which I had not done in years. And I changed things. I was conscious about managing stress. I spent a lot of time every day, in prayer, reading, the word and stuff, so I could have peace because doubts would always try to creep in. So anyway, I also use like you're saying, I use some different alternative things, and I went to see an alternative practitioner in another country who was monitoring me, and I had been on a protocol, the dietary changes, detoxification, and then this alternative natural medicine from another country. And I had done that for 6 months. And at the 6 month mark, they wanted to see me again. And then when they did all the testing, they couldn't find the cancer anymore.
Isn't that so? The United States doctors couldn't find the cancer 6 months after you go
Hmm.
from eating like complete garbage, having
Hmm.
this major cancer diagnosis to completely, there is no cancer 6 months later.
Right.
So if anybody listening here is Obviously, if you've already chosen the path of chemo radiation, we are not here to judge. We're
No.
not here to create shame. We're here to talk to the people who maybe aren't understanding how things work. And even if you are in the middle of chemo radiation, all of that, like just eat as best as you can. You're gonna need to detox off of that too. Find yourself a good holistic practitioner who can help you. Maybe Barbara would know how to like support your body through holistic,
Mhm.
natural food means. Barbara, I would love for you to, before as we finish up, for the woman listening and seeing herself in your story, what would you want her to know?
I would want you to know, first of all, if you haven't been diagnosed with something and you're moving through life and you feel crummy, if life's not what's cracked up to be, don't wait. You don't have to wait until a doctor hands you a diagnosis of any kind to make a change that's going to profoundly impact the way that you feel. It's like the best kept secret to make a change that will make you will allow you to experience health in a way that you never thought was possible and help your body to feel really good in spite of however old you are. The other side of it is for if you're a woman who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, number one, you're not going to die tomorrow. I got to tell you that. So you can step out of that fear mind because there is a lot of fear associated with it. The other side of that too is if you don't have the Lord in your life, I would really recommend that you get to know him because he's the only one who's going to be with you through whatever decision that you decide to make. And especially if you decide to go through a conventional treatment, honestly, from my heart of hearts, you need the Lord. We all need the Lord, but really,
Sure.
in a situation that's as terrifying and taxing and full of suffering, we need the Lord in our lives because that's the only way that you're going to make it through that.
That's
The
right.
other side of that, I would say, is if you have been through conventional treatment, you've been through cancer, and you're worried about recurrence, definitely, 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 you want to look into things that you can do to detoxify your body from those processes and rebuild. And
Hmm.
you know what? You can do it. Your body is amazingly resilient and it can be rebuilt. We just got to give it the tools that it needs. And then that's really where the the full, capacity of your healing is unleashed so that way it can totally turn your health and your life around. That's what I would
That is
say.
so good. And also love yourself where you're at. And what if you
Hmm.
do, if you're rebuilding your body or doing things holistically, or you've been through treatments and you're rebuilding now, give yourself time.
Mm,
My chiropractor made a very good point. Our body hits the save button every 3 months. It's not 7 years like we thought. It's every 3 months. Your body hits the save button. So if you choose to make good, wholesome choices for your body today, in 3 months, which is March, April, May, middle of May, hits the save button. That progress is saved, and then you keep
hmm
going. And so your body loves you. It wants you to live. God wants us to live.
hmm
And so it's like when we make choices today that causes our body to heal from the inside out,
hmm
even we don't know when our last day is, but we can head to that last day feeling our best selves and living our best lives, honoring Christ, honoring the Lord. He has us here for a purpose. We are meant to fulfill that purpose. The enemy does not get to steal, kill, and destroy what God has placed in your life. So do not
hmm
give him the opportunity or the foothold to say, I'm taking you and I'm taking you today. We rebuke that in the name of Jesus, and he does not get to steal any of us earlier than what God has planned.
hmm
So,
hmm
Barbara, I'd love for you to share how they can get connected with you, and then we'll close out.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Instagram at good_nature_wellness. You can find me on my website, www.goodnaturewellness.com. I'm on Facebook at Good Nature Wellness. And also, if it's okay, I have a resource, for your listeners if they're interested. It's a little thing I put together that talks a little more about my personal experience with breast cancer. And there are 5 things that honestly I wish I had known before I was diagnosed. And I really believe that it could be instrumental for helping people to like decide to make a switch and give you some practical tips on how you can actually do that every single day. That would make a huge impact in your life. And you can get that at my website, www.goodnaturewellness.com/five things freebie, or you can reach out to me through any of those social platforms and just ask me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. So,
Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing your heart with us today. And to our listeners, remember your story isn't over. You are not disqualified by what you've been through or currently going through. With Jesus Christ, you are healed, whole, and called. Thanks again.
amen.